if you're struggling to sell sets and you're not really selling homemakers, one of the best ways to start selling more homemakers is to try to sell more ultimates and signatures, to be honest. So if I were to say anything on your appointments that, again, your reps are doing, one of the most important things that they can do is not just pitch homemakers, right? So it's like if you started a homemaker, to be frank, it's hard to close a lot of people on a homemaker because that's the biggest option you're showing them, right? So if you want to keep it simple, right? It's especially if your new reps are relatively new, right? It's the 5 knives you want to talk about in a complete set to get people excited about a complete set, so you can at least show them a price with them being like, I kind of want that. Is the 4-inch paring knife, the boning knife, the salmon knife, the cleaver, and the vegetable knife, right?
So what I'm hearing is to sell more homies, you have to start with the bigger sets.
If you're brand new, here's the thing, guys. If you're brand new at this stuff, you're just started this summer and you're not selling a lot of sets of knives, people spend dumb money on their kitchens. Dumb money. They'll spend 20 grand on cabinets. They'll spend 10 grand on a fridge. The cabinets they buy, literally whatever they spend, they're literally just to make things look better. That's it. There's no functionality increase when you upgrade your cabinets. When you buy a fridge, you're buying a fridge to keep your food cold. When you upgrade your stovetop, you're buying stuff to heat your food up, right? You are selling a product that is actually making the experience of cooking easier, right? So it's like if you're lacking conviction in selling a set of knives to a person that costs $1,300, wake up. Newsflash. If you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old and you're like, oh my God, people don't spend that much money on knives. Oh my gosh, it happens daily, literally daily. People spend more than that on other random stuff, improving a dishwasher, improving, again, an oven. Just, again, getting granite countertops, guys. If you go to a customer's house and they got a fat island, it's like a $20,000 to $25,000 investment on just a freaking island of rock, right? So it's like when you're buying Cutco, right, you have to have the conviction that what you're selling is something that is actually going to make the experience for a customer better, right? So once you have that conviction, then it's like selling a person a $3,000 set of knives, which might sound scary at first. All of a sudden makes a whole heck of a lot more sense because that $3,000 is something they're never going to have to spend again on that product forever, unless they just love it, which everybody, as you already know, loves the stuff. When you talk to people that already own Cutco, what do? They usually buy more. Why? Because they're addicted, right? I tell my customers when they buy a set of Cutco from me, I'm like, welcome to the addiction, right? Because once you go Cutco, you can't go back. Like, you're never going to be able to use another knife without being like, I want this. So as far as selling more sets, right, you got to start higher. The best way to finish higher is to start higher. It sounds super basic, but to sell the 5 knives really quick, it's basically like, Mrs. Jones, people use our paring knife and our basic set all the time. So people ask for a longer paring knife. So we came out with a longer paring knife. People grill a lot. And we also take the fats off of meats. Whereas in the 1940s, that really wasn't a thing. So we came out with a boning knife, which takes the fat off your chicken breast way easier than any other knife that Cutco makes. The salmon knife, guys, we call it the thin slicer. Really good for watermelon. Look up the Jason Jeffrey thin slicer YouTube video if you want to show it to your customers. When you cut through a watermelon, it doesn't get stuck halfway. And then you can use the curvature to fillet the melon off the rind. The cleaver is not something you're going to use every day, but it's the bad boy, Mrs. Jones. If you ever cut through chicken bone or if you ever cut through a frozen tube of ground beef, it's it. That's the knife you're going to use. It's not something you use every day or even every week, but it's nice to have when you need it. And the vegetable knife is fantastic for things like sweet potatoes, squash, any type of root vegetable, because you have 2 points of leverage to pop right through it. So it's much easier than a chef knife where you only have 1 point of leverage, right? So those 5 knives, it took me, a minute and a half to talk about those things. Talk about them. Have a slide that has those 5 knives on it. If you're doing virtuals, put a freaking slide up that has those 5 knives on it. Talk about them. Get them excited about it. And that's going to naturally create more want for a customer to be like, oh, that sounds like a really exciting knife set. I kind of want that. People, by the way, guys, buy ultimates and signatures not because of the tools that come in it. They buy it because of the idea of having a full, complete tool chest for their kitchen. Right? So as far as selling more like sets, guys, if you feel like you might be dropping down too fast right now, if you're like, if a person's like, no, I think I'm good, I don't think I'd use all those tools, don't be like, cool, let me show you a smaller set, right? One of the things that I always ask my customers if they're ever uncertain about like using something, it's like, hey, which tool do you think you like would see the least amount of value in? Which tool, singular? And a lot of people will say the fork or the spreader, right? Because again, you're new, so you're going through this stuff, and sometimes they don't hear everything you're saying. Welcome to the club, right? So if they say, oh, I wouldn't use this, the best line I know that exists that I learned way back when I started selling Cutco like 11 years ago is, do you ever maybe sometimes once in a while do blank? Do you ever once in a while maybe sometimes ever make a sandwich? Oh yeah, we do that actually pretty much every day. You'd love the spreader. Do you ever maybe once in a while sometimes occasionally cut through a bigger watermelon or squash? Yeah, okay, well you use the butcher knife. Right? Think about over the next 40, 50 years, Mrs. Jones, having a knife that makes your life that much easier. Right? One of the things that I've been doing a really good job of, or really being really intentional about this year, guys, is just talking about the experience for customers. How much easier it's going to be for them to grab a knife, and every single time they grab for their Cutco knife in their block, it works. Because think about it, guys. I don't know if your parents have ever done this or if you've ever done this at home. You go into a drawer full of knives and you kind of have to muddle through it to figure out a knife that kind of cuts something. But the nice thing about Cutco is that every single time they grab a knife, cuts right through it. So if you're struggling to sell sets, talk about those 5 knives in the Ultimate, right? You don't really have to mention again a bunch of stuff again in the signature set, because again you want to talk about the Ultimate. If they're like, oh, I don't know if we'd use all those tools, that's where you can tell them about the signature pieces, right? And get them excited about those, right? And then the cool thing is when you're pitching a $3,000 knife set, guys, and they're like, I kind of want that, but I don't know if I have the budget for $610 a month, right? When you get down to a homemaker and you're like, hey, Mrs. Jones, so this actually gets you all the tools you really are going to use right away. And down the road, you can always upgrade to a bigger set later. And this is only $265 a month for 5 months, right? Now, the last thing I would say is that if you're struggling to sell sets or creating urgency without, like, even with your goals, the best way to create urgency for people like, oh, I think I'm going to wait till Christmas, or oh, I think I'm going to wait a couple months. There's going to be a price increase at the end of August, guys. It happens every 2 years, and this year is going to be a big one. It's a fat pay increase for us, more than likely, hopefully, but it's also going to go up a lot because we are in the steel business. So steel, again, commodities, just like every commodity is going up in price right now, steel is not unaffected. So it's going to be a big one. So it's like, hey, Mrs. Jones, if you think you're going to get it anyway, to get the exact same knives with the exact same guarantee and the exact same quality in literally 6 weeks, it's just going to be more expensive, probably about 10% more expensive than it already is today. So if you think you're going to get it and you can budget the $265, it kind of just makes sense. I mean, you're going to have these forever, right? So the big thing is you guys have to have the confidence. Listen to what a customer says, guys. Remember, if a person's not saying yes to something, it's either one of two things. It's either too much money or too many knives. And usually the too many knives, honestly, guys, is just they don't see a need in the tools because you haven't done a great job necessarily right away of building the value in those tools, right? When a person wants something, they will spend the money to get it, right? There's a difference between people that can't afford something or just choose not to buy it because they don't want it. There's a huge difference, right? If you were to show up to an Apple store, right, and they were to sell you a piece of plastic that has glass on it, and you had no idea what an Apple phone was or an iPhone was, and they're like, yeah, this is $1,300. You'd be like, are you out of your freaking mind? It's $1,300 for a piece of plastic with glass on it? I'm good. Thanks. Right? But you know, right, all of the things that a phone, the capabilities, the camera's better than freaking regular cameras nowadays. It's got 300,000 freaking megabytes of storage. You can do all of the things you could ever dream of on a phone. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that makes sense. It doesn't matter what an iPhone costs. I'm going to buy it because I know that I want it. Doesn't matter how much it costs. If the next iPhone costs $2,000, guys, I'm probably going to end up buying another iPhone, right? When this one ever craps out, it doesn't matter what the iPhone's eventually going to cost. I'm going to buy one because I love it. It's the same thing with Cutco, guys. If you can create enough of a want, which is just getting really excited about the pieces, so ask them, right? Hey, do you ever once in a while cut blank or blank or blank or blank, the names and uses? And they're going to be like, yes, we do that. We do that. We do that. We grill. Oh my gosh, we cut melons. Yep, we make sandwiches. Oh, yep, cool. And then as you show them tools in the set, they're like, huh, I would use that. Oh, I would use that too. Oh, shoot, I make sandwiches. Or, oh, man, I make squash and sweet potatoes from time to time. And all of a sudden there's want. It's not like, oh, I don't need it. I want this, right? And then all of a sudden the price isn't really a big deal. And the last thing that you guys can say with sets, guys, is just they're the best value that Cutco makes. Again, they're literally with the Ultimate, they're getting 25% off. It's like $600 off if they just buy it as a set instead of piecing out every single piece out individually. It's a stupid deal, right? So it's like, yeah, Mrs. Jones. So instead of piecing it out individually over time, the most expensive way to buy Cutco is one knife at a time or a couple at a time. So a lot of people, they just buy a set because you're done. And again, compare a 5-pay to a Costco, again, a trip to Costco, a car payment, right? It's like a Ultimate set's an expensive truck payment, or literally a once a month trip to Costco for a family of 4, right? A homemaker of 265 guys is literally a small car payment or an extra small grocery trip or an accidental trip to Target for most families, right? It's really not that much. When you're brand new at this stuff, guys, I can understand how you're like, oh man, I don't know, people are going to spend that much money on knives. I'm 29 now, guys, and as I've grown up in this business, it's wild how much money people spend on stuff. Like literally the amount of people that I run into in like the states of the Dakotas and North and South Dakotas that have $1,000 truck payments and they're my age blows my mind. $1,000 truck payments. It's ridiculous. I'm like, oh my God, like $1,000. I'm like, I would never do that, at least at this point in my life, but people do it because they want something. Right? They want the big truck with the freaking double-tired rear wheels. It's ridiculous, but they do it because they want it. So create enough want, and your customers are going to throw their credit card at you. It's a positive problem. So I don't know if that helps, but hopefully it does.
So think big, right? Believe big,
Ask big,
ask big, and then understand that people spend this kind of money all the time.
and listen to them. Right? If they're like, "Oh, I don't know if I would use those tools," be like, "Cool. Which tool do you think you wouldn't use?" Before you're like, oh, okay, let me show you a smaller set. It's like, oh, I'm a little uncertain, because usually customers are just a little uncertain. They just need a little more reassurance, right? That's it.
There it is. Hey, Bert, what was your biggest day in the last week?
Oh,
didn't you have a 6K day the other day? No.
I know I sold like 10 grand between half of Sunday and Monday. Yeah.
How much are you going to sell at the North Dakota State Fair?
My goal is 65,000.
In how long?
9 days.
Hey, thanks for the time.
Sure thing. Yeah. Guys, make more phone calls.
Hey, appreciate it, Bert. I really do. I really appreciate it. The team appreciates it too.
All right, sweet.
Hey, good luck with your talk. Can't wait to see it.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
See you, man.